very powerful. It's invisible. I don't care if you want to call it a devil or a ghost or a demon. There's something in this home.
Hi angels, it's Hailey Reese and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am so beyond grateful that you are here, and I really do hope, as always, that you're having an absolutely incredible morning, afternoon, or night, whatever it is for you when this video finally reaches you. Today's video is one that has come highly requested, but beyond that is one that I have been so looking forward to exploring and diving deeper with you guys here on my channel. Now, since the beginning of my channel, we've explored the entire Conjuring universe, diving deeper into some of the scariest films released and the haunting true stories that inspired them. Now, in my personal experience investigating, exploring, and researching these cases, the reality is often far darker than any movie could portray. For us, it's a scary movie on a Friday night, but to those involved in the cases, it really was a real-life nightmare. For those of you who may be new to my channel or just may not know, I have a really close connection to the world of Ed and Lorraine Warren. I've met their daughter Judy and their son-in-law Tony. I've sat in the breakfast nook of Ed and Lorraine Warren's home, explored the museum with Tyler and all of the world's most haunted artifacts, but yet not another living person in sight. I've seen the never-before-seen tapes of Ed and Lorraine, and I've even heard the unreleased stories. I know that the work that they did and the cases they investigated was and were very, very real, and I can warn with firsthand experience that these hauntings and the darkness within them are to be taken seriously. So today, once again, we are diving back into the Conjuring universe as we explore one of the most controversial real-life cases, the Smurl family haunting, recently known as the true story behind the Conjuring Last Rites. On September 5th, 2025, the Conjuring Last Rites premiered, inspired by the real-life haunting and torment of the Smurl family in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. Now, this is the fourth Conjuring film, but the ninth in the Conjuring universe, with the film framing it as Ed and Lorraine Warren's final case. How much of the story is true? Who were the Smurls and what really happened to them? In today's episode, we are exploring just that. Now, before we get into it, I do just really quickly want to take a moment and remind you guys that I am uploading a new video every single day. So if you're new to my channel or just not yet subscribed, but you would like to see more of me, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. And with all of that being said, well, let's start at the very beginning. The Smurl family nightmare would last over a decade, with alleged demonic possession, terrifying hauntings, and a family pushed to the brink. This quickly became one of the most controversial documented hauntings. Now, to understand how this story began, we go back to June of 1972. Everything was changing. Hurricane Agnes and her wrath had just hit, causing massive flooding in northeastern Pennsylvania. Because of this, many families found themselves being displaced and having to uproot their lives. In 1973, the Smurl family was among those relocated, moving to the now infamous duplex located at 330 Chase Street in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. The Smurl family was made up of Jack and Janet Smurl, along with their 4 daughters, Dawn, Heather, and their twins, Karen and Shannon. Now, the home itself was around 80 years old, and the family would share the duplex with Jack's parents, John and Mary Smurl. Now, John and Mary Smurl would be living in the neighboring half of the family home. So what do we know about Jack and Janet Smurl at this time? Well, Jack and Janet had met in 1967 and married the following year. Jack served in the Navy and would become a neuropsychiatric technician, and Janet Smurl was a stay-at-home mom who was said to be really involved with the local community and all of the community activities. The intensity of the haunting that this family would endure and encounter didn't begin right from the beginning. When the family first moved in, strange things did start, but it began with more minor oddities that couldn't seem to be explained, like missing items or strange and unexplainable noises. But quickly, what started as odd occurrences became far more concerning and further unexplainable. Things like scratching inside the walls started. There were footsteps with no one visible, and heavy furniture was moving all on its own. Cold spots would form, and the temperature would just suddenly drop. But then there was the odor. This strange yet absolutely foul odor that once again couldn't be explained. While all of this was strange, concerning, and lacking any reasoning, things would only continue to escalate, and soon the Smurl family found themselves within a real-life terror. Along with everything that was already happening, the activity grew. Doors were now slamming and opening on their own doing. Toilets were flushing without explanation. Mysterious stains would appear and then return even after removal. And objects were levitating or flying. Messages were even forming on the family mirrors. Things would only continue to progress. The foul stench would fill their home, and shadows and black masses were manifesting before the family's eyes. The sounds were terrifying. They were almost like growls, screams, or unnatural animal noises. And if it seems like I might be rushing my way through the haunting details, well, that's just because this wasn't even the worst of it. Things just kept getting more and more dark. Janet Smurl claimed that the invisible forces would lift, twist, and cause physical harm to them. On one occasion, the ceiling lights would even crash down and injure their daughter. Their eldest daughter, Dawn, described seeing floating bodies around her room and even claimed to have been grabbed and thrown down the stairs. Now, this part is pretty upsetting to me, but even the family dog couldn't escape the activity, having been lifted off the ground and thrown into a wall. By now in the haunting, objects are just floating, moving, and being thrown around. And once again, you would think that was the peak, but things just kept getting darker and darker. Jack Smurl would claim that he was being sexually assaulted by a demonic entity on multiple occasions. Now, I know that sounds insane and crazy, but throughout paranormal history, this has been documented a number of times. A succubus is a demon that takes the shape of a beautiful woman to visit people, usually men, while they sleep. She can appear loving at first, but her purpose is dark. She feeds on life energy, slowly draining it each time she comes. Her goal isn't love, it's to steal energy, strength, or even the soul of her victim. The more she visits, the weaker the person becomes, pale, sleepless, and haunted by strange dreams. In some tales, you might sense her presence before you even see her, as the room turns cold, the air feels heavy, and you can't move. But yet then she's there, sitting on your chest, smiling softly as the darkness presses closer. According to Jack Smurl, he said, and I quote, "At least a dozen times, it, or whatever you want to call this grotesque woman, had intercourse with me in bed. I was awake, but I was immobile." The Smurl family reached out to a priest and attempted on a few occasions to rid their home of the entity haunting them, but it seemed as though they were unsuccessful, and this only aggravated the spirit further. In January of 1986, the Smurl family would contact Ed and Lorraine Warren, desperately asking for help, and so began the Warrens' involvement in the Smurl family case. Now, by now and at this point, the family's haunting is absolutely out of control, and the Smurl family is just hopeful that the Warrens can get to the bottom of their torment. Prior to their involvement with the Smurl family, the Warrens had worked on other high-profile cases, like that of Annabelle, the Perrin family, Amityville, and then the Enfield poltergeist. They'd really created this name for themselves that gave the family hope. And while I'm sure by now you all know who Ed and Lorraine Warren were, just to be sure, I will very quickly recap here. So, Ed and Lorraine Warren were a husband and wife team, America's most famous paranormal investigators up until their passing. Ed specialized in demonology and exorcism research, while Lorraine worked as a clairvoyant and trance medium. Together, they founded the New England Society for Psychic Research in 1952, one of the first organizations to investigate alleged hauntings from both a scientific and spiritual angle. For decades, they entered the homes others feared to enter, documenting what they believed were genuine encounters with evil. Now, right away, the Warrens got into everything concerning the Smurl family to better understand what was happening. They asked about the Smurls' family life, any religious beliefs they had, and whether or not they've had any involvement with the occult. On that note, the Smurl family were practicing Catholics and reportedly used crucifixes, holy water, and prayers during periods of intense activity. Janet Smurl even stated that their belief in God and the church was what gave them the strength to endure the events. The Warrens deeply considered all that they'd been told by the family and noted the things that they too were experiencing. All of this was being documented. And it seemed as though the haunting activity didn't just occur behind closed doors or exclusively with the Smurl family. Many people on the outside were wondering why the Smurls didn't just move, but it seemed as though to them that the activity would follow them. And when the Warrens came, it was obvious that they weren't the only ones who were experiencing it all, though. Ed Warren publicly claimed that upon entering the home, he felt a temperature drop of at least 30 degrees and saw a dark mass materialize in front of him. He also reported experiencing poltergeist activity like objects moving and levitating, negative odors, specifically that of rotting flesh, and he too experienced messages forming in a mucus-like substance or in threads on the mirrors, telling him to leave. Pig noises could also be heard coming from within the walls.
It's very powerful. It's invisible. I don't care if you want to call it a devil or a ghost or a demon. There's something in this home which has the intelligence to inflict physical and psychological harm.
Now, the Warrens noted that there was a closet in the family home that seemed to be a crossover point in the duplex, and Lorraine specifically picked up on 4 entities within the home. So who and what were these entities? Well, one was a harmless elderly woman, and the second was a violent young girl. The third was a man they said had died in the home or near the property, and the fourth was a demon who manipulated the other 3 to do as it wanted, essentially using them as tools to torment the family. Now, the Warrens believed that the demon had been dormant for decades, but that their daughter's puberty and their family's faith had awakened it, so to speak, which made sense to them because the activity had taken a whole new life and a whole new level of extreme after the family had celebrated a Holy Communion. Lorraine Warren would say that the communion provoked the entity, suggesting it was a reaction of anger or defiance from something malvoyant confronted by a sacred act. They recorded audio of knocking, screeches, and other noises that were said to be the result of the haunting. And Ed Warren described the entity as powerful, intangible, and very dangerous. He was worried that this was a serious case of demonic infestation and warned the family of the 4 stages. The first is infestation, second, oppression, third, possession, and fourth is death. So the Warrens opted to bring in Father Robert McKenna to help the Smurl family, and unfortunately, it seemed this would actually only anger the demon more. By the third exorcism attempt, it finally seemed like the haunting and attempted possession was contained. But in only a few months, that couldn't be further than the truth. Jack Smurl would once again see a black mass he believed was trying to possess him. He grabbed his rosary and prayed and prayed and prayed until it disappeared. Things seemed to only be getting worse. By now, the Warrens feared that the family was in the second stage of possession, and that the figure was trying to lure him into the third stage, which again is actual possession. Now, the Smurl family felt completely trapped. According to them, the spirit or demon would follow them any time they left the house. There seemed to be no escape, no break from this constant evil overtaking their once peaceful lives. Now, like anything, for every believer, there were a lot of skeptics as well, and there were many people who offered no sympathy or understanding towards what the Smurl family was experiencing. Remember how I mentioned this was an extremely controversial case? Well, it was now all over the media, and everyone was sharing their opinions surrounding the experiences. With this media attention came a great deal of skepticism, and a lot of people believed this was nothing more than a scam for fame and money. And that's where somebody like Paul Kurtz comes in, being the chairman for the Committee of the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal. Well, as you could imagine, he launched his investigation. He and fellow investigators examined the Smurl haunting and concluded that there were several natural or psychological explanations for the reported phenomena, such as hallucinations, attention-seeking, environmental factors, and that no compelling evidence required invoking supernatural causes. Specifically, a quote reads, "Our investigation of the Smurl case thus far points to several possible alternative explanations for what has allegedly been happening, without the need to invoke an occult or paranormal one." However, it's really important to note that he did not say the haunting was definitely a hoax or that paranormal explanations are impossible. Rather, he claimed that the evidence thus far just didn't require one. For an example, he said that the neighbors had complained for years of a foul smell from a broken sewer pipe, and that some of the strange noises were traced to the walls by Dawn's room. And this raised the question of perhaps attention seeking. It is also said that the Smurls declined psychological testing, and allegedly his investigation faced limitations. Apparently, Ed and Lorraine had blocked investigators from entering the home despite previous permission from the Smurl family. And Kurtz was also apparently denied the Warrens' video and audio evidence, with explanations similar to the tapes were sent to the church or loaned to a TV company that they couldn't name. When word traveled about the Smurls family book deal, questions really raised regarding their motives. Everyone was saying that they would never remain in a home with so much torment and supernatural dangers. But again, I do want to reiterate, the Smurls claimed the entity seemed to be attached to them and not directly the home, and that moving would really serve no long-term benefits. We also have to consider the idea that the family had already been uprooted and we don't know their financial situation in it all. Sometimes people really find themselves stuck in homes that they can't move out of. But skeptics also did point to the fact that apparently Jack Smurl had underwent brain surgery years earlier. They said it's a possible factor in his experiences, but that wouldn't explain the experiences of the rest of the Smurl family or the Warrens. In 1989, after years of investigation, the Catholic Church reported finding no evidence, and they discouraged pretty much any further involvement of Ed and Lorraine Warren. Again, as I mentioned, this case was pretty controversial for them. That same year, they would leave the West Pittston duplex behind and decide to move to an entirely new home. Now, from what I've read, according to the family, from the moment they settled in, the strange noises, the foul smells, and the dark apparitions that had once haunted them for over a decade seemingly simply stopped. For the Smurls, it was finally over. But this also leads people to question why it had once followed them and then suddenly was able to just stop, especially if it were a demon. Many people think perhaps it was their perception that it was following them the whole time, but that moving really did put the end to a very, very real haunting. But either way, I will note that it further adds to the controversy surrounding this case. So let's discuss the movie. A very quick warning here, there will be a couple of little spoilers, but let's cover the main big differences between the real life case and the film. Now, while the movie was inspired by the Smurl case, it really does take on a lot of creative liberties in many areas. The biggest being the claim that this was the case that ended it all for Ed and Lorraine. Now, this is not the case in the real life of Ed and Lorraine Warren. While it may have been one of the most controversial cases, it was not the last. In fact, the haunting in Connecticut followed after this case. The real life case also did not center around a single haunted mirror, and the real Judy Warren was not possessed or involved in the investigation of the Smurl family haunting. I do want to note, though, that we were in the presence of and looked into the Conjuring mirror at the Warrens Occult Museum, the real mirror. Now, if you guys do want me to do a video breaking down horror films inspired by real life events and hauntings with a complete breakdown of fact versus fiction, I absolutely can do that, because while this case is very much real, the film was adapted with a Hollywood spin, as some and most often are. Needless to say, though, the Smurl family haunting remains one of the most terrifying and controversial cases of paranormal activity recorded and investigated. But while, like many hauntings, there may be possible explanations for the activity, to the Smurl family and to the Warrens, the haunting and attempted possession was very much real and sets an example for how dark the world of the paranormal and supernatural can be. Now, I have had so many personal experiences that a skeptic could theorize about, but for me, that doesn't change the reality of all of my encounters. And as I always say, it is very, very easy to not believe until it happens to you. But what do you think of it all? I would love to know all of your thoughts, opinions, and theories regarding both the film and the real life case down in the comment section below. But that is basically the Smurl family haunting that inspired the Conjuring last rites. Have you guys seen the movie? What did you think of it? What do you think of the real life case? I would love to know everything down in the comment section below. But that is basically it for today's video. If you guys are new to my channel or you are just not yet subscribed but you enjoy my content, I would love it more than you would ever know if you would go ahead and click that subscribe button, and please give this video a big thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Remember, my loves, do all things with kindness. And until tomorrow, I love you. Bye, guys.